Don't walk into a divorce blind, because what I'm about to share could save you from years of financial pain. Most men think divorce is about splitting assets, the house, the cars, the savings. But here's the hard truth. Divorce isn't just about what you get, it's about what you're stuck with. And for too many men, that means debts they didn't see coming, debts they never agreed to, debts they regret for the rest of their lives. See, money doesn't just disappear when a marriage ends. Every credit card, every loan, every tax bill still has to be paid by someone. And if you're not careful, that someone is you. Wives who want a clean slate sometimes push their financial mess into the settlement, leaving men carrying the weight long after the papers are signed. And the worst part, these debts don't always look obvious. They're hidden in the fine print, buried in the paperwork, masked as joint expenses or household obligations. By the time you realize what happened, it's too late. The ink is dry and the court says you're responsible. I've seen men leave marriages thinking they were free, only to be crushed months later when the bills start arriving. Credit cards maxed out in the final months. Loans to friends that suddenly show up in court. Medical bills for treatments they never even knew about. And the regret always sounds the same. I should have looked closer. That's why today matters. Because in this video, I'm going to expose the 7 hidden debts wives stick men with after divorce. These are the traps, the tricks, the ticking time bombs that men overlook until the day they explode. So stay with me, because once you know what they are, you'll know how to protect yourself. And the first hidden debt is one of the most common of all. Credit cards quietly maxed out before separation. Debt number 1. Credit card balances run up before separation. The first hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is credit card debt. And not just any credit card debt. Balances that suddenly balloon in the months before separation. Here's how it happens. She knows the marriage is ending. She knows divorce is coming. And before papers are filed, she starts swiping. New furniture, vacations, shopping sprees, emergency expenses that never existed before. Every charge lands on a joint credit card. And on paper, that card belongs to both of you. By the time you sit down in court, the balance is sky high, and unless you fight it, that debt gets split. Half of those charges, maybe even all of them, land squarely on you. The danger is how normal it looks. Credit card bills arrive like they always have. Purchases are buried under vague categories. Retail, travel, miscellaneous. Unless you're combing through every line, you may not realize how fast the balance is climbing. And once the divorce starts, it's too late to say, "That wasn't me." The debt exists and someone has to pay it. I've seen cases where men walk out thinking they're free, only to be hit with thousands in charges for things they never even touched. Designer clothes, weekend getaways, electronics still sitting in her new place. And the court doesn't care who enjoyed the purchases. If the account is joint, the responsibility is joint. The regret comes later, when the payments don't stop. When you're sending money every month for a lifestyle you never lived. When you realize you should have frozen those accounts the second the marriage started to crumble. The lesson is simple. Watch the credit cards, pull statements, look at the dates of every charge. Don't assume the balance is normal just because the bill arrives like always. And when divorce is on the horizon, protect yourself. Close joint cards, freeze accounts, or demand that new charges stop being counted as marital debt. Because nothing stings worse than paying for memories you weren't even part of. And credit cards aren't the only way men get stuck. The second hidden debt comes from something even harder to challenge. Loans to friends and family that suddenly become your problem. Debt number 2, loans borrowed from friends or family. The second hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is the so-called loan from friends or family. Here's how it works. Somewhere in the middle of the marriage, or even right before the split, she claims she borrowed money from a parent, a sibling, or a close friend. Maybe it's to cover medical bills, or repairs, or unexpected expenses. And then, during the divorce, that loan magically reappears as a debt the household is supposedly responsible for. On paper, it looks like you now owe her family or her best friend thousands of dollars. In reality, that money might never have existed at all. Sometimes it was a gift, not a loan. Other times it was cash she spent and now wants to disguise as debt. And in the ugliest cases, it's nothing more than a handshake agreement designed to pull money out of your pocket and funnel it back to her circle. Courts see this trick all the time, but here's the catch. Unless you challenge it, it stands. If it's labeled as a marital debt, you could be ordered to pay part or even all of that so-called loan. And once it's in the settlement, settlement, the money flows out of your life forever. The regret comes when men realize too late that they agreed to pay back debts that were never real. I've seen cases where husbands were sending monthly payments to in-laws for years, all because no one stopped to ask for proof. No contract, no repayment schedule, no signatures, just a line in the settlement that turned into a lifetime of regret. The defense here is simple but powerful. Demand evidence. Real loans come with paperwork, terms, interest, agreements, signatures. If all you see is a vague claim and no documents, push back. Insist on proof before accepting responsibility. If it's not in writing, it's not your debt. Because the truth is, some debts are real, but many are fabricated, exaggerated, or twisted to shift the burden onto you. And if you don't stop it, you'll spend years paying for something that was never yours to begin with. And if you think family loans are bad, the third hidden debt is even heavier. It comes from the government itself. Tax bills you never knew about. Debt number 3, tax bills from joint filings or unpaid taxes. The third hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is tax debt. Here's how it happens. During the marriage, you file taxes jointly. On paper, that means you're both responsible for whatever's owed. But if she underreported income, claimed deductions she wasn't entitled to, or simply didn't pay the bill, the IRS doesn't come after her. They come after both of you. And once you're divorced, if that debt wasn't handled in the settlement, you could be the one left holding the bag. Even worse, some wives use taxes as a weapon. They stall on filing, hide income from side gigs, or claim credits they don't qualify for. It looks fine at the time, but months later, a notice arrives. Back taxes, penalties, and interest stacking up. And if your name is on those returns, the government doesn't care who caused the problem. They want their money, and they'll take it from whoever they can. I've seen men blindsided with 5-figure tax bills after divorce. Bills they never knew existed. Bills they assumed she had handled. And once the IRS has your name, the regret hits hard. Garnished wages, frozen refunds, and a credit score sinking like a rock. The trap is thinking taxes are her responsibility if she earned the money. They're not. If you signed that return, you're legally responsible too. And even if the judge says she's the one who has to pay, the IRS doesn't honor divorce decrees. If she doesn't pay, they come after you. So how do you protect yourself? Review every tax return before you sign it. Make sure every line is accurate. When divorce is on the table, demand copies of past filings. If there's unpaid tax debt, address it in the settlement. Get it paid before the divorce is final, or secure indemnification so you're not left vulnerable. Because tax debt isn't like credit cards or loans. You can't negotiate it away. The IRS will collect one way or another. And if you're not careful, you'll be the one footing the bill for her mistakes or her schemes. And while tax bills are heavy, the fourth hidden debt feels even more personal. Medical expenses you never knew existed until they land in your lap. Debt number 4, medical debts you didn't know existed. The fourth hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is medical debt. Medical bills are sneaky because they don't always show up right away. A doctor visit, a hospital stay, even a routine test can take weeks or months before the bill lands. And if those treatments happen during the marriage, the debt is considered marital. That means you could still be responsible even if you never knew the treatment happened. Here's how it plays out. She has procedures, prescriptions, or ER visits you weren't told about. Sometimes they were for elective treatments or emergencies that had nothing to do with you. But because the bills were racked up before the divorce was finalized, the responsibility gets split. Suddenly, you're stuck paying for medical expenses you never agreed to and maybe never even knew about. I've seen men walk out of court thinking they were free, only to get slammed with thousands in unpaid hospital charges months later. Ambulance fees, specialist visits, surgeries that were scheduled without discussion, and the regret hits hard. Paying for care you weren't part of, from doctors you never met. The danger here is that medical debt doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't come as one giant bill. It trickles in. $400 here, $800 there, until it snowballs into thousands. The fix: always request a full accounting of all medical bills before the divorce is finalized. Don't assume everything has been paid just because you haven't seen a bill. Ask for statements from insurance companies. Demand disclosure of any outstanding balances. If new bills appear later, they should be tied to her, not you. Because medical debt isn't just money, it's stress. It's collection calls. It's a weight that can follow you for years if you don't catch it in time. And while medical bills sting, the fifth hidden debt hits even harder. Business debts tied to her projects that suddenly become your problem. Debt number 5, hidden business debts tied to her side project. projects. The fifth hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is business debt, especially from side projects you barely knew existed. Here's how it happens. During the marriage, she starts a small business. Maybe it's a boutique, a consulting gig, an online shop. On the surface, it looks harmless, something she does on the side. But behind the scenes, that business racks up loans, credit lines, and vendor bills. And because it started during the marriage, the law often treats those debts as marital, even if you had nothing to do with them. Suddenly, you're being asked to pay for her dream project, loans she took out in both names, equipment she bought on joint credit cards, unpaid invoices she left hanging when the business didn't work out. You never signed up for it, but now it's legally yours too. It gets worse when the business is in her name alone, but the debts are household obligations. Courts have ruled that if the debt supported the family in any way, like covering groceries while she invested in her company, it can still count as marital. That means you could be forced to split it, even if the business never earned a single dollar. The regret men talk about later is brutal, paying off failed side hustles, covering debts for businesses that never took off, and writing checks for projects they never supported. It feels less like divorce and more like being forced to bankroll her mistakes. The fix is vigilance. During divorce negotiations, demand full disclosure of all business accounts and liabilities. Don't accept vague claims of "it's my business, so it's my debt." If the business existed during the marriage, you need proof of where the money went. Push to separate her personal venture from your financial responsibility. Because here's the truth, when a business succeeds, she'll say it's hers. When it fails, she may try to call it ours. And if you don't fight back, you'll end up paying for losses that were never yours to carry. And if business debts feel unfair, the sixth hidden debt is even pettier. Household bills and utilities she leaves behind for you to cover. Debt number 6, household bills, utilities, and leases left unpaid. The sixth hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is the pile of everyday bills she quietly leaves behind. Here's the setup. While the marriage is collapsing, the household still runs. Electricity, water, gas, internet, rent, car leases, and every other bill that keeps life moving. But when things get tense, many wives simply stop paying. They let those bills stack up, knowing the accounts are in both names. Then, once the divorce is finalized, the balances don't just vanish, they land on you. Imagine this. You move out thinking you've left the house behind. Months later, you get a letter from the utility company demanding hundreds or thousands for unpaid balances. Or worse, the landlord comes after you for damages and back rent on a lease you thought was her problem. Because your name is still on that contract, you're just as responsible. It happens with car leases too. She keeps driving, but stops making payments. The repo company doesn't care who's behind the wheel. They care whose names are on the paperwork. And if it's yours, your credit takes the hit. The regret comes when men realize they were too trusting. They assumed she'd handle the bills because she was still living in the house. They assumed marital debt meant she'd pay her share. But in the eyes of the companies you owe, there is no share. If your name is on the account, you're liable. End of story. The fix? Get ahead of it before the divorce is final. Close joint utility accounts or transfer them to her name. Remove yourself from leases if you're not living there. Cancel joint service contracts. It might feel petty in the moment, but it protects you from years of regret later, because the bills you ignore now will find you later with late fees, collections, and credit damage that can take years to repair. And as frustrating as household bills are, the seventh hidden debt stings even worse. Legal fees, cleverly disguised or shifted, that leave you paying for her lawyer on top of your own. Debt number 7, legal fees disguised or shifted in settlement. The seventh hidden debt wives stick men with after divorce is legal fees. Divorce isn't cheap. Lawyers bill by the hour, court costs stack up, and paperwork alone can cost thousands. But here's the trick. Many wives find ways to push their legal bills onto you. Sometimes it's blatant. Her lawyer argues that you make more money, so you should cover her fees. Other times it's buried in the settlement. Phrases like costs shared equally or expenses to be divided. On the surface, it sounds fair. In reality, it means you end up paying for the attorney who just spent months fighting against you. I've seen cases where men thought they were walking away clean, only to be blindsided with orders to cover tens of thousands in her legal bills. They paid their own lawyer and hers. Double the cost, double the regret. The danger is how subtle it looks in writing. Court documents are full of legal jargon, and tucked inside can be small clauses that shift responsibility. Unless you're paying close attention or have a sharp lawyer on your side, you might not notice until the bills arrive. And it doesn't stop there. Some wives rack up fees, dragging out the process, filing motion after motion, knowing that if the court orders you to pay, every hour benefits her and costs you. It's a strategy as much as it is a debt, and men who don't push back get crushed by it. The regret later is bitter, realizing you not only lost assets, but also financed the fight against yourself. Writing checks for her legal team feels less like divorce, and more like betrayal stamped with a court seal. The fix? Fight any attempt to shift fees. Insist that each side pays their own, unless there's a legitimate, documented reason otherwise. Read every line of the settlement before signing, and never ever agree to vague language about shared costs without clarity, because nothing stings worse than paying for a lawyer who spent the entire case working against you. Credit cards, fake loans, tax bills, medical charges, business debts, household bills, and legal fees. 7 hidden debts that can destroy a man's future if he doesn't spot them in time. Now you've seen them, the 7 hidden debts wives stick men with after divorce. Credit cards run up in the final months. Loans to family or friends that never really existed. Tax bills from joint returns or unpaid filings. Medical expenses you never knew about until the hospital starts calling. Business debts tied to her side projects. Household bills and leases left behind like a ticking time bomb. And finally, the cruelest of all, legal fees shifted onto your shoulders so you pay for the lawyer who fought against you. 7 traps. 7 financial burdens that don't just end when the divorce is final. They haunt you for years if you let them slip through. Here's the truth. Courts divide both assets and debts. And while you're focused on protecting the house, the retirement accounts, or the car, she may be working just as hard to shift every bill, every balance, and every unpaid mess onto your side of the ledger. If you're not watching closely, you'll walk away carrying weight that was never truly yours. The regret doesn't hit right away. It comes later, when the first collection call comes in, when the IRS letter arrives, when you're still writing checks for credit card charges that bought her new furniture. That's when men realize the fight wasn't just about what they lost, it was about what they kept, the debts no one warned them about. But here's the good news. Every one of these traps can be avoided. If you slow down, if you demand full financial disclosure, if you challenge vague claims and insist on proof, if you shut down joint accounts, pull credit reports, and remove your name from leases before walking away. And above all, if you read every single line of that settlement before signing. Because once the ink dries, it's done. The bills are yours, and no amount of regret will erase them. Divorce will always cost something, but it doesn't have to cost your future. Protect yourself, question everything, and don't let hidden debts turn your fresh start into years of paying for someone else's mistakes. Because in the end, the men who survive divorce strongest aren't the ones who avoid pain, they're the ones who avoid regret.